Great.
Okay, we're live.
We are live.
Let me move that one over so it doesn't cut you off.
Okay.
We should have did hair and makeup check
I
before we got
know.
live.
What the heck? Just kidding. Well, you lead the way, and I will just listen. I will follow along.
Okay.
Recording on here too. Okay.
All right, so welcome to another episode of Married.Mommy.Maestra. Bienvenidos a otro capítulo de Married.Mommy.Maestra. Would you like to introduce yourself? I'm
Certainly.
so excited for this.
So, my name is Martina. My maiden name is Rangel, and my married name is Yacuento. So, Martina Rangel Yacuento. What else should I say? I've known the Gonzalez family for probably 25 years, 20 years?
20 years.
20 years. We met when Bianca, or Alejandra, as I know her, when she was still a little girl, going to elementary school. Her family was looking for someone to teach her how to speak English,
Yes.
and that's how we met. And the rest is history. So, conocí a la familia González, hace como 20 años. Los conocí cuando Alejandra necesitaba aprender inglés. Yo fui su maestra de inglés. Y así nos conocimos y aquí nos tenemos ahora en este día. Gracias.
20 años
20
después.
años después.
So, do you want to start with like your upbringing?
Sure. So, okay. So I grew up in Texas, the southernmost tip of Texas without going into Mexico. The area is known as El Valle or Rio Grande Valle. Wait, am I speaking in English, aren't I?
Yes.
Sorry. So I grew up in the southernmost tip of Texas without going into Mexico. The area is known as the Rio Grande Valley. I am a product of illegal immigrants. My family came, well, my mom and my grandmother and great-grandmother came when my mom was about 4 years old. And they just stayed in the Rio Grande Valley. That's where I stayed until I was about 25 years old. I moved to Michigan, and this is where I live now. I've been here about 30 years. So, yeah, that's what it is. So, soy mexicana. De padres mexicanos, padres inmigrantes. Mi mamá, mi abuelita y mi bisabuela vinieron a los Estados Unidos cuando mi mamá tenía aproximadamente 4 años. Me crié en la frontera. El lugar se llama el Valle de Río Grande. Cuando tenía aproximadamente 25 años me vine a vivir a Michigan después de haberme casado con mi marido Mark, que es de inmigrantes italianos, muy parecido a nuestra vida de infancia, y aquí nos estamos. So my husband is Mark. He is an immigrant of Italians that grew up a lot like we did, or their upbringing was very similar to us Mexicans. So okay. I don't know what other details you would like for me to add on.
Okay. Do you want to tell us about your time in Texas, or do you want to go straight to Michigan?
Sure, I'll tell you a little bit about my time in Texas. So again, much like Bianca, I went to school and my first language is Spanish. I did not know any English, and I didn't have the fortune to have somebody introduce me to the English language growing up. So we went right into kindergarten. not knowing much English, but I had, my mom was extremely beyond her times and beyond her capabilities of, knowing what to do when you have children. Her upbringing was very similar to a lot of Hispanic or Mexican people that come over from Mexico. They grew up in a ranch, I guess. Right, and
welcome to another episode of Married. Whoa! Why did it stop? Oh my gosh.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh no.
I really hope that didn't. Okay, we're just gonna keep going.
Okay, we're going to continue going. So anyways, I don't know if anybody heard the backstory of my family coming from Mexico. So I started kindergarten with Spanish being my first language, much like Bianca's story. I didn't have the fortune of having a friend that spoke English, so I went right into kindergarten not knowing any English, and pretty much just being thrown into the wolves of everybody. But I think being at that time and age, a lot of the kids were in the same boat as we were. It's the Rio Grande Valley, if anybody's not familiar with it, is a predominantly Mexican community, even till this day. Growing up, we came from pretty much Spanish speaking at home and going to school and having English. Again, my mom was very forward thinker, and always expressed her wish of us getting educated.
Okay.
And education was priority in our house, and that's how we are where we are today. So anyways, I will try to stop and speak in Spanish now. So mis papás eran mexicanos inmigrantes de México, ilegales. Me crié en los Estados Unidos, en el Valle de Río Grande. Como la historia de Bianca, yo también entré a la escuela no sabiendo nada, sin saber el inglés, pero gracias a mi mamá. Ella era una persona que pensaba mucho más de su capacidad, o I don't know how to say that in like the forward thinker part of it. No sé cómo decirlo en español, pero...
I don't know how to say that either.
Pero bueno, mi mamá pensaba unas cosas. Anyway, mi mamá nos exigía mucho en la educación. Nosotros, ella nos exigía hablar el español propio, pero también el inglés propio. Entonces, entonces ahí nos educamos, ahí quedó. Pero, ya cuando ya uno creció un poquito más y ya estábamos en high school, tenemos que encontrar la manera como educarnos. Entonces, teniendo familia y amigos que eran, trabajadores de campo, que trabajaban en las labores. Una amiga que es muy amiga mía me exigió que me viniera a trabajar con ella en la labor. Entonces, a los 18 años, nunca haber trabajado en la labor, me vine a trabajar. Trabajamos el espárrago, la cebolla, y para los que saben lo que es detasseling, no sé cómo se dice en español, pero era una cosa que se le quitaba a los plantas de elote.
Okay.
Sí, entonces trabajé todo el verano. Regresé a a McAllen y me eduqué en la universidad. So getting back to English and just trying to trace back a little bit of what I was saying in terms of my education. Once I was of age of going into high school, I had no way of going into college, even though my parents or my mom really wanted us to get educated beyond high school. She found that was the only way that we would get ahead in life. Yeah. And so she really forced us to get an education. And since we didn't have any money, because that's just the way it was back then, a friend of mine suggested that I come up north back, because of course we lived in the South. She recommended that I come up north because they were what they called back then, I don't know what they're called now, if they even exist, immigrant workers, crop pickers for lack of a better word. And I came up here to Indiana, I believe, and in Illinois to work for the summer. We worked in the detasseling corn, asparagus picking, and onion picking. I made enough money. I went home and I got educated at the university level. So I went to college, post-high school, and part of that is where I am today.
What did you study?
So I studied social work.
Okay.
I did not quite finish my degree, but it did open up a lot of avenues for me. A lot of avenues that I had no idea that I could follow. And I actually got into something completely different and started knowing that I had a good, strong English background and a Spanish background. I got into translating, interpreting, and I actually got a job in Mexico, in one of the maquiladoras in Mexico, and I was working there when I met my husband. Okay. And the rest is history. I am here in Michigan for the last 30 years. So, should we do in Spanish? Right?
Lo que estudiaste.
Okay. Yeah. Sí, lo que estudié fue trabajo social, pero no terminé mi educación de universidad. Pero sí me abrió muchas puertas, abrió avenidas que yo no conocía. Gracias a Dios, me abrió muchas puertas y de allí pude encontrar una avenida de intérprete, traductora, y encontré un trabajo en una maquiladora en Reynosa, que es la ciudad que en la frontera de México. Y allí conocí a mi marido. Yeah. So, así son las cosas.
Okay, so you come to Michigan.
I do come to Michigan. I came to Michigan. I was 25 years old, a young mom. I kind of met my husband on a whim down in Mexico. I was actually living in Mexico. I got tired of crossing the borders, and we had some friends that were co-workers of my husband, and he whisked me away to Michigan. We have 2 children, 2 grown boys. Daniel's my older one. He's 32, and I have a 28-year-old son named Marco. And I have been sort of on and off at home mom and then somewhere in between I did a lot of interpreting and tutoring and other little jobs here and there. Yeah, so conocí a mi marido en el trabajo en México. Él es de Michigan, iba a la maquiladora por cuestión de trabajo y por amigos nos introducieron y me captivó el corazón y me vine a Michigan sin saber qué tan frío estaba.
Oh my gosh.
Tenemos 2 hijos, un hijo de 32 años se llama Daniel y un hijo de 28 años que se llama Marco. Yeah. I don't know if you want me to dive more into childhood or life in Michigan.
We can go to life in Michigan.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we lived in Livonia for about 30 years. Predominantly, not Hispanic, I'm sorry. I don't want to call it white community, but an American community or white, I guess.
Majority.
The majority of the people speak English, and there's really no Mexican influence or Hispanic influence in where my kids grew up. So unfortunately, my kids weren't real keen on learning Spanish, but they know where their roots are. So they grew up, like I said, in Livonia, in predominantly white community. There wasn't a lot of Hispanic or Mexican influence, but they certainly don't forget their roots. I guess I'm reiterating what I just said, and I apologize for that. I thought I had said it in Spanish, but I will now turn and answer in Spanish. So mis hijos y nosotros vivimos en Livonia por casi 30 años. Mis hijos se criaron en una ciudad americana. No había mucha influencia mexicana, cultura mexicana, pero gracias a Dios no pierden sus raíces. Lamentablemente no hablan mucho español, casi nada de español porque pues no había mucha influencia y no había manera de cultivar la lengua es mexicana o español, la lengua de español. So, sí. I don't know. Where should we take this?
Where should we take this?
I don't know.
I don't know why he keeps trying to stop on me.
I don't know.
Okay. It's okay. If anything,
you'll go back and
I can go back and fix it. Or I can go back and take the audio from one of the videos.
Okay.
Like, there's ways
of getting around.
Yes.
Okay.
But this interview is gonna go out.
It's gonna happen no matter what.
No, I remember sidetracking. When I first started the podcast, and I was like telling everyone the point of the podcast,
sure,
all the influence that I wanted to like put out there, and everyone was like, "Are you gonna interview Martina?" And I was like, I can't not interview her. Like I quite literally would not be where I am today if it weren't for like everything that you did for me. So
that brings chills to to me. That means quite a bit to me. That's obvious. Your parents are really special people, and I think that I guess we should say how it even began. So my younger son was in preschool, and your dad's boss approached me and asked if I would be able to tutor you in English because you were going to school and you really didn't know how to speak English, and he wanted you to, not him, but maybe your parents wanted you to have a little bit of a background on how to speak English. And so that's how this whole story started with you and us and your family. That's how it all began, and here we are. And you saying that you aren't where you are today, and I take that to heart. I love it, but really I have to give your parents credit. Your dad reminds me a lot of my mom, of how much of a forward thinker that he is. he doesn't really hold back. It doesn't matter how good his English it really is, but he was always ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
And then once you started school, there was really no stopping your mom. Your mom was very much of an advocate for you and your brothers.
Oh, yes.
To get a really good education, which, you know this, and I know this, that if you don't, I mean, especially from your mom not really dominating or knowing, not having a native background in English, how difficult that could be. But it didn't matter. I mean, it didn't matter to your mom. She wanted you in school. She wanted you to get a good education. And she was a huge advocate for you. I might have taught you a few words here and there in English, or maybe even a little bit of English, but really it was, the credit your parents. Because, like I said, there is no stopping your mom, and your dad is a very forward thinker. And I think as Mexicans, being very much into our culture, sometimes that limits us as Mexicans of not being able to get ahead, or not even being able to help our children get ahead, because we limit ourselves to, maybe saying, well, I don't know the language, and it doesn't matter. It didn't matter to your mom. Your dad didn't care.
Yeah.
So, credit your parents also. So, yeah. I do. I credit your parents very much. And I was that little grain of salt in your life, but really it was more your parents. And then, you.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Did you want to go in Spanish?
Oh, I can say that in Spanish too. Cuando empecé el podcast, y les expliqué cuál era el punto del podcast, que era lo que quería agradecer a las personas que me ayudaron a llegar a donde estoy hoy. Y mi mamá, la primera persona que preguntó, ¿vas a tener un capítulo con Martina? And I was like, estoy hablando en español. Y le digo, sí, necesito que tener un capítulo con ella, porque si no fuera por ella, yo no estaría donde estoy hoy, porque tú me enseñaste inglés, y eso fue algo que, pues, sin el inglés no sé si estuviera aquí.
Sí, y te doy muchísimas gracias, como lo dije en inglés, que me dan, se me hace el cuerito de gallina, porque tu familia es mucho, es muy importante, para nosotros, me toca mucho el corazón, pero la verdad es que yo soy un granito en tu vida. Sí, yo te enseñé cómo empezar a hablar inglés, creo, pero la mera verdad, tienes que ver a tus papás. Lo puedo decir en un closet, lo puedo decir en una montaña, que la mera verdad, sabiendo quién es tu papá, Pedro, y saber que él pensaba mucho, muy adelante de sus capacidades, siempre. Él no se limitaba con su inglés, no le importaba. Él venía a nuestra casa y sabiendo que mi marido no hablaba en español, él le echaba en inglés. Y también darle mucho crédito a tu mamá, porque ella tampoco nunca se detenía, no sabiendo la lengua, no sabiendo el inglés, pero nunca se detuvo, y siempre era la persona que de veras te exigió mucho para ti y para tus hermanos, que buscar las mejores escuelas que ella pudiera en su manera, ¿verdad? Pero encontrar cómo educar a ustedes. Y muchas veces como mexicanos, ¿verdad? Nos limitamos. Ay, no, ¿cómo? Porque no sabemos el inglés. ¿Y qué le voy a decir si no me entienden en español? Pero tu mamá, la mera verdad, no se detuvo. Pensando que los metió en una escuela árabe.
Yeah.
Pero la escuela árabe que dije yo, ¿qué está pensando Laura? Pero ella sabía que allí se iban a tenía una mejor educación que en las escuelas donde estaban, pero buscando la manera, siempre buscando la manera de educarlos a ustedes. Y aquí estamos, darnos mucho de crédito a tu papá y a tu mamá, que nunca se limitaron, no importaba si sabían el inglés o no sabían el inglés, ellos buscando la manera de cómo sacarlos ustedes adelante, que se educaran en una manera dominando el inglés. So, sí, y aquí estamos, ¿verdad? Con el podcast de Bianca, de Alejandra, muy bien conocida, todos la conocemos por Ale.
Yeah.
We all know her as Ale, not Bianca, but I guess mostly people know you by Bianca.
Well, now, yes.
Yeah, but we all knew her as Alejandra, which is her middle name. Right?
Yes.
Or is it? Yeah, it is your middle name.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you're right. But yeah. So, where do we take it from here?
Where do we take it from here?
I don't know. We don't have any prepared questions.
I know.
Which is kind of disappointing.
I know.
But anyways, I guess maybe this story can relate to people that may not know stories of people that have. I guess I can speak for myself. As you can see, that I speak English really well, and I can go back to Spanish and speak that pretty well still. But a lot of people maybe that are not Mexican can maybe, have a little glimpse of what it is growing up. I mean, your husband, you said he was a dreamer, or is a dreamer, part of the dreamer DACA. But yeah, I mean, a lot of us having our parents, your parents, and what I say our parents, meaning Spanish being their first and only language for the most part, as my mom, coming into the United States, even though she was 4, I mean, they came over illegally. How they got across, I don't really know. I mean, I try to do history, but we can give you a glimpse of what it was like, having those Spanish-speaking only parents. And, we go back and we think of where we are today. And, I ask myself as an adult, if I could tell myself when I was 5, 4, not having a whole lot, not having anything, very, very, very humble beginnings. If people can see that story, that's a great message to get out there in Spanish or in English to people that speak English or people that only speak Spanish, and getting those stories out there and saying, like your husband saying a dreamer, those are big dreams, because it doesn't happen to a lot of people. Not everybody has those opportunities. And, and it's really important to get that story out there. Whether it be through social media, books, whatever, it's important. So, yeah.
In Spanish.
In Spanish, yes. We keep translating to Spanish. And what were we talking about? I'm sorry. Sí estaba comentando con Ale que es bonito, es bueno de poner nuestras historias en la red internet para saber o poner I don't know how to say it, nuestras historias de mexicanos que venimos de padres mexicanos que solo hablaban inglés o español, perdón, y poner nuestras historias en la red o en comunicación de social, or is it social media?
Redes sociales.
Redes sociales, sorry. Me estoy trabando con mis palabras, pero sí, poner nuestras historias porque estas cosas es mucho importante. Ponerlas y que la gente sepa de nuestras historias. Tú en la juventud y yo ya una mujer más grande de edad, pero las historias son muy iguales. Mis papás eran mexicanos que no sabían el inglés, pero encontramos la manera, ¿verdad? Encontraron ellas las maneras de educarnos. Y dominar el inglés y superar las vidas que ellos vivieron.
Darnos la oportunidad que ellos
no tuvieron, con cosas muy limitadas. Mi mamá yo dijo que ella no tuvo educación posiblemente hasta el 5º grado, entonces sabiendo que sus papás no hablaban inglés, no venían de educación, y decir que nosotros somos mujeres educadas, pero más que todo saber que esas historias existen y siguen existiendo hoy en día. Esas historias se pueden decir de todos los días. Todos los días hay personas igualitas a nosotros. Un poquito diferente, pero en las mismas situaciones que nuestros padres. Sí. Yeah.
I feel like you and my mom talked about something upstairs earlier, and she wanted you to make a point, but I can't remember what you were talking about.
So your mom and I were talking about, I don't know if you're considered a millennial, but
I don't know.
Whatever, Gen X or Gen Z, whatever you are.
Different generation.
Different generation and different upbringing. Kind of not being able to relate to our stories of our upbringing, I wasn't born in Mexico. I was first generation in the United States, but came from immigrant parents, illegal parents in the United States, having these strict, very, very strict upbringings, and how we don't want to stray too much away from that. And of course, I'm talking about there's got to be at least a 25 to 30 year difference between you and I, but yet our stories are still so similar.
Yeah.
Because your parents had that upbringing that my mom and her family did.
Yeah.
Where, we need that though. We need it. You need it. And yeah, you guys are growing up so differently than what we did. But our morals shouldn't change from that.
Right.
Yeah, you have social media. Yes, you have English around you everywhere. But your upbringing was still the same. Very, not only humble upbringings, but strict in the way that you still respected your parents. You knew what your parents meant. And our culture.
Yeah.
More than anything, because morals are everywhere, whether you're an American, Italian, Irish, doesn't matter. The morals are still pretty much the same, just different cultures, but it's not forgetting who we are as people just because we speak good English.
Yeah.
Or that we're in the United States and, all that is old-fashioned stuff. Well, yeah, it is, but it's also part of who we are.
Yeah.
And so I think your mom wanted us to reiterate that it's really important that we don't forget our roots, no matter how many generations. And you guys are in your 3rd generation, right, with your children. And yeah, you can't forget that, because that's what makes us who we are as Mexicans.
Yeah.
You know, that's how we stand out as our cult, or as our community is. You know, that's the footprint or the mark that we leave in the United States. It's not ever straying too far away from who you really are.
Yeah.
And down deep inside, we continue to be Mexicans, no matter how many generations are ahead of us. A little more English and less Spanish. It doesn't matter. We're still Mexicans. And so, so that your mom really wanted us to reiterate that, because these young youth, they tend to forget, and they cannot, you guys can't relate to our stories because you didn't have to go crap picking. You didn't have to have some of the hardships that your parents went through or my mom went through, and even to some extent myself. You know, I consider myself a little bit luckier than my mom, a little luckier than like my best friend in life, that, you know, they came straight from Mexico with her family was 11 children, straight from Mexico. Most of them were born in Mexico. And I think if I might stand corrected, but most of them came over illegally. And, you know, they had a lot of hardships. I mean, we were rich in comparison to them, and we were poor. So, you know, again, don't forget all that. And your mom wanted us to reiterate that quite extensively.
Yeah.
So, podemos decirlo en español, que tuvimos una conversación con tu mamá, y que tu mamá quería que de veras que yo pudiera decirlo, que hoy en día muchas veces ustedes de juventud no pueden, ¿cómo puedo decir? No pueden, no saben, las historias de sus papás. La historia de mi mamá, que nosotros también nos criamos en pobreza, pero la historia tuya y la historia mía, aunque somos casi 30 años de diferencia, son muy iguales. Pero la cultura mexicana no se nos puede olvidar, porque eso es lo que nos define como mexicanos americanos aquí en los Estados Unidos. Y las generaciones nuevas que siguen después de nosotros, se les olvida o no pueden, ¿cómo puedo decir? No pueden entender ¿qué serán? Las tradiciones, la cultura mexicana. Por ejemplo, los papás, como tus papás, que se criaron bien estrictos. Mi mamá era muy estricta, que ustedes a lo mejor no pueden entender esas cosas, pero en realidad no podemos olvidar de las cosas que somos mexicanos, aunque estemos muy bien educados, aunque sea menos español, más inglés, pero no olvidarnos de nuestras culturas, nuestras tradiciones de mexicanos. Las raíces, porque eso sí nos define mucho como mexicanos. Y no, que no se nos olviden esas cosas. Y Laura, de veras, queríamos que dijéramos esto, porque para que la juventud a lo mejor entienda que sí, no se criaron como nosotros, pero ustedes siguen siendo mexicanos. Y seguiremos siendo mexicanos hasta el fin de siempre, porque no, entre más y más mexicanos en los Estados Unidos. hay que seguir adelante con esas tradiciones mexicanas, que no se nos olviden las raíces de dónde venimos, de México. Sí, y no sé si dije que... Did I talk about my friend?
Your friend.
Sí.
Yes.
Puedo decir que, y no sé qué había dicho en inglés de mis amigas, pero, sí, que ellos, o sea, que todas las historias son iguales. Ellos también, esta amiga mía, vinieron de México, o sea, como mis papás, tus papás, y aunque tú, ¿verdad? Vinieron de México, y sin tener mucho, sin saber nada, pero ellos, siempre, sí, nos dijeron que no se nos olviden lo que somos. I don't know what else I said in Spanish, in English about them.
There was 11 of them.
Oh, yeah, que eran 11 de ellos y, si nosotros casi no teníamos nada, nos criamos en la pobreza, ellos tenían menos. Entonces, y sigo diciendo que esas historias son muy importantes. Yo veo a mis amigos, a toda la familia y muchas, o sea, la historia es la misma. Estos amigos míos, toda la familia muy educados, muy, y con familia igualmente, a nuestros papás que no sabían inglés, no sabían nada de eso y sí, que no se nos olviden nuestras raíces.
Hope you're happy, Mom.
I hope you're happy, Mom.
Okay. I don't know.
Where do we take it from here?
Where do we take it from here?
I don't know. Should we continue to talk about how important it is about our cultures and maybe trying to reach people out there that really don't know our stories? Our stories of the progression that not only us, but families continue to make leaps and bounds of, living that American dream. And it's what our families wanted better for us.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's really important to put out there these stories, our stories, your story, and I continue to talk about my friend and her family. Again, I said it in Spanish a little bit, which had probably nothing to do with what we had talked about, but how well they're doing. Every single one of them. Only 3 of them, I believe, were born in the United States. But yet, every single one of them superseding, their parents' expectations. And this is a family that every single one of those kids were crop pickers. And that's how they made ends meet. How they fed their families from, the youngest kids, maybe working from 10 on up. And that's how my family grew up, being crop pickers. I remember my mom coming up to Michigan, or really maybe not Michigan, but somewhere up north, Indiana or Illinois. And I was young. I was 5 or 6 maybe. And seeing my mom work in the fields, and my job was to carry jugs of water. So again, these stories need to be out there. People need to understand a little bit of what it takes to get where we are. Maybe my kids don't even know that. Pero sí podemos decirlo en español, que estas historias necesitan continuar. Porque estas historias son de hoy en día, de 30 años atrás y de 50 años atrás, que las familias vienen a los Estados Unidos, ya sean ilegales, legales, a como hayamos llegado a los Estados Unidos, pero las historias continúan y tenemos que poner el mensaje allí que todos queremos la misma cosa, todos tenemos un sueño, que nuestros hijos salgan adelante, mejor que nosotros, mejor que como vivían nuestras familias. Eh, digo, ¿verdad? Yo siempre me refiero a esta amiga mía, con que esta amiga nos criamos juntos en la misma vecindad. Ellos venían de México, 9 de los 11 niños, todos vinieron de México.
Ajá.
Y la única manera que ellos sabían cómo salir adelante y cómo sus papás sabían educarlos a ellos era de trabajar en las labores. Así ellos sabían, podían comer todos los días. Esas historias necesitan estar allí, necesitan saber gente que estas historias son de todos los días. Seguimos viviendo esas mismas historias.
Yeah.
Tus papás son esas historias, nosotros somos esas historias, mi mamá era esas historias, mi amiga y con su familia son esas historias que son muy importantes en esta época, especialmente hoy en día, porque esas eran los pasos que nuestros padres tomaron y cómo nosotros estamos aquí,
Yeah.
cómo pudimos educarnos, cómo supimos superar hablar el inglés propiamente. Sí, tenemos que continuar esas historias y te doy gracias a ti. I give her a lot of thanks porque este es el ejemplo de cómo estamos continuando a poner esas historias, pero más que todo moviendo ¿qué se dirán? Las historias adelante.
Uh-huh.
Ahora teniendo estas redes sociales, tener la manera de cómo poner esas historias y ver que, sí, nuestros papás, pero este es el producto de tus papás,
Yeah.
de vivir en los Estados Unidos. So I'm giving her props for, putting our stories out there and putting that message out there for people that really don't know the struggles that these families go through and where we are today and how well educated we can become, even though our stories were such of those that if you had asked me, and maybe if you think about where you were 5 or 20 years ago, it's like, there's no way that I'm going to be doing podcasts, hosting podcasts, dominating that English language, because you did come from parents, and even till today, that don't dominate that language, that English language. So, yeah. That is fantastic, and we continue to move forward and put those stories out there.
Well, it's looking like it's about time to wrap it up.
Yes.
So
wrap it up.
I really just wanted to thank you for taking the time to come on, and thank you for everything that you've done, and especially like just keeping in touch.
Absolutely.
Because, I mean, I you taught me English. And I taught Spanish for a year. So, in order to give those kids the opportunity, like they signed up for that class. Mm-hmm. And when they signed up for that class, I asked them, like, why are you signing up to this class?
Sure.
And a lot of them were just this. I realized these kids are just like me. I just want to be able to better communicate with my parents. I want to be able to, like, have an actual conversation with them. I want to be able to, like, put bilingual on my resume one day and actually mean it.
Absolutely. And
so, just like...
And it opens up a lot of avenues.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, just being bilingual, I've been able to dominate, not master, but I've been able to learn a third language, just from having that Spanish background. So I appreciate you having me on. This can open. Yeah, you're right about that. Having that bilingual and really meaning what a bilingual is. Dominating both English and Spanish, which is not easy.
Oh no.
So, and not forgetting, your Spanish, which sometimes I have to admit I do. So, yeah, this has been great. I appreciate it, and just continue to put those messages out there.
But, okay, en español.
En español.
Te quería agradecer por tener, darme la oportunidad de tener esta conversación contigo, por siempre estar, siguiendo ser una parte de mi vida después
estar
de tanto
en contacto
tiempo.
con tus papás.
Yeah. And
sí, y continuar, sí, teniendo la amistad entre tus papás y nosotros y de verte ya una mujer crecida y educada. Y sí, qué bueno, sí, así estamos.
Okay.
Thank you everyone for
everyone
listening.
for listening.
We appreciate it. She's taught me a few things, and hopefully this hasn't been too boring.
I don't think so. I think the older generation is gonna be very appreciative of this one.
We hope so, that we put this message out there and we continue not to forget. Again, one more time, don't forget who we are as Mexicans. A little more English, it doesn't matter. Your heart is still Mexican, or Spanish. Mexican. Sorry, I get confused sometimes.
But, let me just pop in my stuff in here really quick.
Absolutely.
If you haven't already subscribed to be a patron on Patreon, you should do that because you get exclusive content for the podcast, exclusive content for the book that I'm going to be releasing at the end of the year. And you also get a shout out in the book if you're a patron, so that'll be really cool because your name will be in my book. Also, like, share, subscribe, be on the lookout for my YouTube channel, and have a blessed one. Bye.
Bye-bye. Oh my goodness.